The World Government of One Piece and the Soul Society of Bleach are two military organizations that share a lot of structural and thematical similarities. Both serve as the central governing body of their respective stories, enforcing their policies through rigid hierarchies, military might, as well as old traditions, and both hide dark secrets that challenge their legitimacy as an organization, as well as revealing systemic corruption. However, whilst one of them is viewed as the main heroes of the story, the other is viewed as the villains. So what exactly do these two organizations have in common? Well, in this video, we'll be comparing the World Government and the Soul Society, as well as understanding why they are two sides of the same coin. Let's first start off with the structure and hierarchy of each organization, as they share a lot in common in that regard. At the very top of the hierarchy, there is the supreme commander of each organization, that being Imu and the Soul King. Both stand at the very pinnacle of their respective organizations and have absolute power over their respective worlds. Though, interestingly enough, both are also completely unknown to the public and even to higher-ranking members, which goes to show their dedication to keeping their existence a secret. Below Imu and the Soul King are their respective royal guards, the Gorosei and Squad Zero. The people in these groups are the highest ranking members of each organization that are known to the public, and their main purpose is to protect their respective leaders. They're also powerful enough to take on the strongest of people in each verse and fight them at a somewhat equal level. Below them are the main military branch of each organization, the Marines and the Gote 13 respectively. Both of them have leaders, Akainu the fleet admiral and Kyoraku Shinsui the head captain, and they lead the main military force, being the admirals and the captains. The admirals and the captains make up the majority of each organization's military strength, and the loss of even one of them is a massive blow to each organization's power. Below them are the vice captains and the lieutenants, which while being weaker still have enough power to take on fairly powerful enemies. Then finally below them are your average marine soldiers and shinigami, high in number, but most don't have nearly enough strength to really take on anyone of note. Each organization also has a main headquarters, Marineford and the Serete, and they also have prisons that are designed specifically for dangerous criminals who are the worst of the worst, Impel Down and Muken. Outside of each organization, there also exists the respective royal families, being the 20 families that make up the Celestial Dragons, and the 4 noble clans, which include the Kuchiki and Shihoin families respectively. And there also exists the covert operations / intelligence units of each world, being the CP0 and the Onmitsukido respectively, which mainly carry out stealth missions. With that being said, both organizations share a very similar structure and hierarchy, with both having a ruler hidden to the public as well as reliance on military divisions and secret police units. However, whilst both claim to be the enforcers of justice, both have deep-rooted corruption within their judicial systems, among other secrets that they have kept well hidden from the public eye. As mentioned before, it is no secret that both the World Government and the Soul Society do not exactly have the cleanest track record, and they have both committed terrible crimes that have led to great suffering within each world. Starting with the World Government, one of their greatest crimes is completely erasing 100 years of history to become what's known as the Void Century. This was presumably done by them in order to hide the truly awful things that they had done to seize power over the One Piece world, which could most likely include killing Joy Boy as well as sinking the Ancient Kingdom. This is also why they completely forbid doing research on the poneglyphs, as they contain information that describes the true events that happened during the Void Century. This is indeed what caused the Ohara incident, where it was discovered that the archaeologists there were conducting research on the poneglyphs, which is what caused the world government to go as far as to completely incinerate the entire island in a sea of flames in what's known as a buster call, burning a good portion of the knowledge contained in the island to the ground, along with most of the archaeologists there, with of course the sole exception of Nico Robin. The royal families of the world government are also the embodiment of pure evil, as they find pleasure in enacting truly abhorrent and unspeakable acts such as quote-unquote human ownership, as well as the ending of human lives. They have absolutely no regard for beings that they consider to be lower than them, as they think of them as nothing but trash. On the Soul Society side of things, it also has done similarly horrible crimes. One of the worst, of course, being the nature of the Soul King himself. Instead of a being who's actually, alive, the very thing holding all of existence together is nothing but a disheveled corpse with all of its body parts and limbs stolen. This was due to the original 5 noble families mutilating and dismembering the Soul King and turning him into a frozen corpse and the linchpin of existence in order to seize power over the Soul Society. Besides that, the Gote 13 also made an order to completely eradicate the Quincy in order to restore the balance of the 3 worlds, similar to the world government's Buster Calls in a way. Despite their reasons being fairly understandable, they could have gone about it in a more peaceful way. Outside of the main capital of the Seirete, there also exist the Rukongai districts, which are constantly in a state of poverty and neglect, which leads to a high percentage of starvation and crime rates in the districts, which get more and more severe the further away the districts are to the Seirete. Rukia and Renji had to grow up in one of the worst parts of the Rukongai, and they had a rough childhood all around. This could have been avoided had the Soul Society paid more attention to the Rukongai. And of course, a list of Soul Society's crimes wouldn't be complete without mentioning Mayuri Kurotsuchi. I don't even really need to get into the specifics here. He has done some truly awful and questionable stuff. I mean, we're talking human experimentation, unethical inventions. He's, in general, is a really messed up person in the head and a borderline psychopath. With that being said, it is now clear that both organizations have deep-rooted issues that have caused major problems in each world. They're both oppressive to individuals and races that exist outside of each organization, for example the Fishmen and the Quincy's. They also heavily favor the elites, being the Celestial Dragons and the noble families, and both use tactics of fear to enforce their regulations by using Buster Calls and Sokyoku executions respectively. However, there is a very significant difference between these two organizations that cause one to be the hero while the other stays a villain. Despite both organizations being heavily flawed in their way of enforcing justice, the Soul Society are the main heroes of Bleach and the World Government are the main villains of One Piece. The reason why they stand at polar opposites of the moral spectrum is simply because the Soul Society has somewhat reformed since the promotion of Shunsui as the new head captain of the Gote 13. This is because whilst Yamamoto was indeed very powerful, he stuck to the old traditions of the Gote 13 for over 1,000 years. However, under Shansui's rule, as well as the very significant difference that Ichigo had made over the Soul Society, it slowly began to reform and change its ways over time. Of course, the Soul Society isn't perfect and it never will be, but at least it was better than the Soul Society that we saw at the beginning of Bleach. In stark contrast to that, the world government has always remained a tyrannical force. It hasn't changed for the hundreds of years since it has existed, mainly due to Imu being in charge of the organization, as well as Akainu just being a terrible person in general. Due to the nature of the leaders of the world government being inherently evil, the world government really has no redeeming qualities, and there is next to no hope of it ever being able to reform under the rule of its current leaders. The only real option to stop the world government's tyranny and authoritarianism is to completely destroy the organization entirely. Maybe then the world of One Piece might finally truly be free of all the evil that Imu and the world government has caused. To conclude this whole video, the world government and the Soul Society are the same due to the nature of their organizational structure, as well as the deep-rooted problems that lie hidden within each organization, which include systemic racism, authoritarianism, corruption, neglect, and favoritism, among other things. However, where they differ is their current moral standing. Whilst the Soul Society has partially reformed thanks to a new leadership as well as outside influence, the world government has remained as a tyrant and will most likely remain that way until Luffy and his friends finally put an end to the world government as a whole. For the reasons mentioned, the world government and the Soul Society are indeed two sides of the same coin. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to click the subscribe and like button, it'll be greatly appreciated. And comment down below what you think. Is the world government redeemable, or should it be taken down? Is the Soul Society better or worse than it was previously? Let me know. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.